My name is Scarlett Rain, and in this video I introduce our paper, Human-in-the-Loop Segmentation of Underwater Coral Imagery, accepted for presentation at the IEEE CVF Conference on Computer Vision and Pattern Recognition, at the third workshop on Learning with Limited Labeled Data for Image and Video Understanding. This is work completed in collaboration between the QUT Centre for Robotics and CSIRO's Data 61. Marine surveys are being increasingly performed by underwater and surface vehicles, which generate large quantities of images. These images must be analysed to obtain usable outputs, such as coverage estimations of species or substrate types. Coral images are also highly complex, with indistinct boundaries making it necessary for marine scientists, as opposed to crowdsourcing platforms like Amazon, to annotate underwater images. In this paper, we make several contributions towards improving accuracy and label efficiency for coral segmentation. Namely, we demonstrate that the Dino V2 general foundation model can be used without fine-tuning to generate discriminative, robust, deep features for domain-specific coral images. We combine the features with a simple nearest neighbour algorithm to generate accurate augmented ground truth masks. We focus on the extremely sparse label setting, in which we only have 5 to 25 point labels per image. And to this end, we propose a human-in-the-loop smart labeling regime for selecting informative point locations. Finally, we improve on the previous state of the art, and we make recommendations for efficiently labeling coral images. We can automate analysis of imagery using semantic segmentation. However, these models are typically trained on dense pixel-wise ground truth masks. Instead, we aim to use the existing domain expert labeled datasets of photo quadrant imagery. These images have been labeled using coral point count, with either randomly distributed or grid-based sparse point labels. A point label propagation approach is then used to generate augmented ground truth masks, which can be used for training a model to perform semantic segmentation. Approaches have used superpixels based on either colour or deep CNN features to perform point label propagation. However, these approaches were designed for 100 to 300 point labels per image. In this paper, we are interested in the extremely sparse label setting, in which we have only 5 to 25 point labels per image. When only 5 points are available per image, this means a reduction of the labels by up to 98%. We propose using the foundation model Dino V2, which is a powerful task-agnostic feature extractor, to produce per pixel deep embeddings. We then cluster the embeddings using a nearest neighbour classifier to obtain the augmented ground truth masks. When only very few point labels are available, it is beneficial to leverage domain expert knowledge. We propose a human-in-the-loop training regime to optimise the point locations and improve point label propagation in this setting. Human-in-the-loop framework takes an input image, and we ask the domain expert labeler to label up to 10 points centrally in coral instances. We find the denoised Dino V2 features for these points and use them as templates for clustering the rest of the pixels in the image. We will discuss the feature extractor further in the next slides. When choosing a new point for labeling, we take the inverted cosine similarity map to the nearest known labeled pixels and use this as a means of determining where in the image we need to have a labeled pixel. Perhaps there is some previously unlabeled coral, or maybe some area of the image is blurry or looks different than existing templates for that class. We also encourage exploration of new parts of the image by creating a distance map. We combine the feature similarity map and the distance map, and we weight the two terms with lambda. We use the result as a probability map for selecting the next point for labeling, and for this we take the maximum of this combined map. This point is fed back to the domain expert labeler, who labels the point. This continues iteratively until the maximum number of labeled points for the image is reached. The final augmented ground truth is then obtained by a final nearest neighbour clustering. This augmented ground truth mask can then be saved and used for training a model to perform semantic segmentation. We used the foundation model DynoV2 to generate per pixel feature embeddings for our method and found that clustering these embeddings is effective for point label propagation. We also trialed variations of the DynoV2 feature extractor and found that using the denoising vision transformers model to remove positional artifacts from the features resulted in the best performance. In the supplementary material, we also present results for features extracted by DynoV2 trained with registers. Here we have a visualization of the feature space for different feature extractors. We are using principal components analysis to project the deep features into the RGB color space. Similar colors represent similarity in the deep embedding space. First, we have the CNN features used in the prior state-of-the-art point label aware superpixels, or PLAS. We can see that when compared to the ground truth segments, these features are not effectively grouped into useful segments. For the DynoV2 features, there are a lot of grid-like artifacts, and these are a result of training with positional encoding. If we use the denoised version of DynoV2, these artifacts are cleaned from the features, and the clustering improves as a result. We evaluate our approach on the UCSD mosaics dataset. In the case that only 5 point labels are available per image, we outperform the previous state-of-the-art by 17.3% for pixel accuracy and 22.6% for mean intersection over union. Even if the smart human-in-the-loop labeling regime is not used, our approach still outperforms the prior approaches by 3.5% pixel accuracy and by 5.7% for mean intersection over union. Here we evaluate our approach and compare it to the prior methods. We have mean intersection over union of the augmented ground truth masks on the y-axis, and we increase the quantity of point labels from 5 to 300 points along the x-axis. We can see our approach with the human-in-the-loop smart labeling scheme in red, and our approaches with grid and random points are shown in orange. Our human-in-the-loop approach significantly outperforms all prior approaches for small numbers of point labels. We also evaluated the impact of using randomly placed points versus grid-spaced points and found that across the board, all approaches benefited from using the grid-spaced points. This is shown by the dotted lines now highlighted in yellow versus the solid lines for the random points. We can also see the relative performance gains when increasing the number of point labels. The improvement in performance when point labels is increased from 5 to 100 points for all approaches is more significant, and the performance for all approaches saturates around the 200 to 300 point mark. We can also inspect qualitative outputs from our proposed approach. Here we can see for the extremely sparse label setting, when only 5 point labels are available, the prior approaches all fail to produce a useful augmented ground truth mask, whereas our approach effectively propagates the point labels in the image. For the traditional point propagation case, where there are 300 point labels available, we can see that our approach still produces an accurate augmented ground truth mask. In this work, we have demonstrated that the DynoV2 foundation model can be used without any fine-tuning or training on coral imagery to produce meaningful feature representations for point label propagation. Our approach uses the denoised DynoV2 features with a nearest neighbour classifier to produce the augmented ground truth masks. We have focused on the extremely sparse label setting, when there are only 5 to 25 point labels per image, and have outperformed the state-of-the-art by 22%, 19% and 8% mean intersection over union in the 5, 10 and 25 point label cases respectively. We also compared different labeling styles and point label quantities and made several recommendations. This work has demonstrated the relevance of foundation models for domain-specific tasks in the underwater context and has significantly improved the performance and annotation efficiency of point label propagation in the extremely sparse label setting. We also publicly release our code on GitHub. Thank you for watching our video.